Thank you for inviting me to speak at the launch of the report, Switzerland's Foreign Policy and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Peasants. Due to the time difference and the pandemic, I apologize that I'm unable to speak to you live today. I'm going to focus my brief remarks on the strengths of UN drop today. First, let me begin with the widespread support. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and other people working in rural areas started off as the result of a grassroots movement beginning in Indonesia in 2001, but very quickly going global. It continues to grow in popularity amongst people, and it stands on strong political grounds since the majority of the world's governments voted in favor of the declaration at the Human Rights Council and later at the UN General Assembly. Now I want to turn to the legal and political status of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and other people working in rural areas. One common argument that I hear against implementing the UN Declaration is that it is not legally binding. I think this argument relies on a simplistic understanding of law that is used to avoid taking action. The Declaration draws from and builds upon the foundations of international law and human rights law. It is common to articulate specific content for the rights of particular groups, and this UN Declaration does that. Admittedly, the Declaration is not an international treaty, but nor is it a set of voluntary guidelines. That means it takes more political will to implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and other people working in rural areas than if it were a treaty. But as a UN Declaration passed by the Human Rights Council and General Assembly, it takes less political will to implement it than if it were some sort of multilaterally negotiated set of voluntary guidelines. The legal status and power of UN declarations ebb and flow. Most famously, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is an example of a UN General Assembly declaration that has become a core element of international law. More recently, we see a country like Canada that originally voted against the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples in 2007, but now, most recently in 2020, Canada passed legislation that creates a roadmap for the Government of Canada and Indigenous peoples to work together to fully implement the Declaration. Let me finally conclude on the issue of the substance of the Declaration itself. I find the Declaration incredibly helpful. Because of COVID-19 and climate change, everyone has become aware that the way to tackle questions of hunger, malnutrition, and famine is to think of food in systemic terms. Governments all over the world are now realizing that they need to create national food policies if they haven't already, and that this requires a focus on all aspects of society to do so. Transforming food systems is not just the job for ministries of agriculture. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and other people working in rural areas provides a normative framework through which governments and people can transform food systems in a way that meets human rights obligations. It covers a wide range of issues with clear and detailed language. Moreover, it is not just about peasants, but about rural communities. As such, it is written in a way that connects peasant rights to workers' rights to indigenous peoples' rights. That is to say, it is built on a foundation of solidarity. The premise being that if food producers and indigenous peoples' rights are protected, then we all benefit from a strong and resilient food system. Looking at today's excellent program, I do hope that after today, the conversation in Switzerland will not be about whether to implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and other people working on rural areas, but on how to start implementing it as soon as possible. Thank you very much.